Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all for being here this morning. Welcome to the Elliott Church. And if you're new or an infrequent visitor, be aware that all are welcome and you're surrounded by kind people. So, always a good place to be. And this, of course, is Baseball Sunday. I'm Herb Crehan. I've had the good fortune to do this 3 years in the past, and honored to be back here for another shot. And the timing's perfect because tomorrow is the trading deadline. And we're hoping, right now, Undecided is pitching tomorrow. It really would be nice to have a pitcher with a name, so, and the same is true on Wednesday, so we're definitely hoping we'll have a pitcher. and I also want to mention that I stood up here and said that, baseball is the best. There's no clock, the only sport without a clock. Whoops. Now we have a clock, and more about that to follow, of course. This is a time where we do the announcements, and Bill, I think if you would take a minute and come on up, that'd be great.
I don't think I need to go up. I just wanted to announce that we, as everybody knows, maybe we're going to the Worcester Red Sox, who are playing the Rochester Rail Riders. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
Red Wings. Red Wings?
Rochester Red Wings.
Yes.
I wanted the Lehigh Iron Pigs. Anyway, there are 4 tickets yet unused. If anybody wants to be a late addition to the ball game today, they're for free. They're nice seats, a nice park, $17 seats, and they're very nice. If you want them, let me know.
Thank you, Bill. Any other announcements? Pleased to see you all here this morning. And this place where all are welcome. Impossible dreams are both welcome and encouraged. Very nice as always. And if you would all be good enough to stand, we're now going to sing a hymn. Now, if you're an optimist, it's in your silver book, and if you're a pessimist, it's in your gray book. But regardless, it's number 205, Amazing Grace. Now, if you'd all remain standing, I'd invite you to join with us in saying our covenant. In the love of truth and in the Spirit of Jesus, we unite for the worship of God and the service of all. Be seated. Our reading this morning is from The Soul of Baseball by Joe Posnanski, who's a highly respected sports writer, specifically baseball generally. But the story is really about Buck O'Neill. And when I look out, I can see there are a number of people who would have watched Ken Burns' baseball. And if we did, we would have observed that Buck was easily the most eloquent guest. Buck had played and managed in the old Negro leagues, and then later became a coach and a scout for the so-called major leagues. And he has wonderful, wonderful quotes. You know, and this Posnanski stayed with him for about a year, and Buck was eligible for the Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame. And year after year, they would say, well, that's next year. Sort of like integrating professional baseball at the major league level. And Buck was very philosophical about it. And in fact, let me read what he had to say on the subject. Shed no tears for Buck. I couldn't attend Sarasota High School. That hurt. I couldn't attend the University of Florida. That hurt. But not getting into the Baseball Hall of Fame, that ain't gonna hurt me much, no. Before, I wouldn't even have had a chance, but this time, I had that chance. just keep loving old Buck. And it's often said that he was a very, very good player, as well as manager, coach, and the like. And it's often said, what a shame that he didn't get to play against the very best. And often the response is, who's to say he didn't play against the very best? so many answers we'll just never know. But Buck was a great philosopher, and as so often happens, after he passed away, he was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame. Now I'm going to ask my good friend, Bob McBride, to come up here, and he's going to lead us in the Lord's Prayer, the version that you all received when you came in this morning. Thank you, Bob.
Our Mother and Father, which is all around us, and which goes by many names, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, here and now and throughout eternity. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our faults, as we forgive the faults of others. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kindness, and the love, and the beauty, for which we should be grateful, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you very much. Now, as I suggested at the beginning, we've had some rule changes, and I'm going to run through the more significant ones very, very quickly. And I had mentioned also at the very beginning that now we have a clock. The clock measures the time between pitches, and the end result has been they're playing pretty much at the pace that they played when I fell in love with baseball, and I'm sure that's true for many of you as well. So I'm good. We can also still play a game on into infinity. There's no rule that says we have to stop playing. In fact, there was a game that lasted for 2,000 innings, well documented in the Iowa Baseball Confederacy. Now that is fiction, but nobody has ever proven to me that there's never been a game that lasted 2,000 innings. But it's going to be a little tougher because the geniuses who run the game have decided if the game's still tied after 9 innings, we're going to put a ghost runner on second base and start with nobody out. Now, ghost all by itself is pretty spiritual and appropriate in this context. It's actually mentioned 108 times in the King James Version of the Bible. Never mentioned positively, but it is in there well known. Now, for the life of me, I can't understand why we can't play one extra inning of real baseball. And if that doesn't resolve the issue, fine, put Casper on second base and we'll see what happens. But I understand you don't want to play 23 innings and ruin 4 or 5 pitchers' arms and the like, but in my mind it's just too soon to do it after 9 innings. And I had also said when I was up here a little while ago, a few years ago, I said that the strategy is unlimited, and it's like chess. You can put your defense any way you like. Well, not anymore. Turns out you have to have so many fielders on this side of second base and 2 on the other side. Also, there are limits on the relievers, specifically left-handed relievers. All of this comes about because left-handed hitters are born whiners. That's been well documented. They have every advantage already. They're a step closer to first base. If there's a runner on first base, the first baseman is holding the runner on, and there's a great big hole, and they always have to face their same-handedness maybe a third of the time, and on and on and on. But they said, it's too hard to hit the baseball with those meanies of throwing 97 miles. It's too hard to hit it in the left field. And so you will have noticed that it wasn't too hard for a lot of very good hitters, but it was. And the other rule, of course, is to bring in a left-handed reliever, you have to leave that reliever in for at least 3 batters. So you can't have those mean left-handed pitchers coming in and taking advantage of it. But you know, baseball will go on quite nicely, and we're all looking forward to, many of us are looking forward to going to Worcester this afternoon, watching some good baseball. And I think it's worth mentioning that 100 years ago, it was against the law to play professional baseball on Sunday. You know, as a lot of most of you know, the no-fun Puritans introduced some blue laws that said, fun is not allowed, you should spend the day in church. And spending time in church I'm all in favor of, but the fun part. Now, as it turned out, the Massachusetts legislature amended the law in 1929 so that baseball would be allowed, but there's also a provision that said, not if there's a church within 1,000 yards, and lo and behold, there was a church within 1,000 yards in Boston by Fenway Park. So as a result, the Red Sox actually had to play 1929, 30, 1931 at Braves Field. And finally some genius said, hey, let's ask the minister if he minds if we play. And as it turns out, it was a Unitarian church. And when they asked me, he said, of course not. He said, our services are over by the time the game starts. Not only that, you know, maybe some fans wandering in will see the activity as we close up and decide to give it a chance. So, you know, the Red Sox were not run very well in the 20s and 30s, and that's a perfect example of that. And speaking of Sunday, as I just was, Billy Sunday was a pretty good outfielder in the 1880s in the National League, played about 10 years, and then he had some sort of vision and decided to forsake his evil ways and became a Presbyterian minister. He became an evangelical, fire and brimstone. The old tent meetings, people passing out, he was so exciting. And he preached 20,000 sermons between 1895 and 2035. You're not closing in on that record, Adam?
I don't think so.
So he actually was more of a performer, but we have some current day's examples. Bernie Carbo, who played for the Red Sox, I know pretty well, and first substance abuse almost killed him. The baseball assistance team stepped in and took over his life, and once he was able to get on the other side and recover, being Bernie, he founded his own church, and he very sincerely expresses his vision of the Lord. But he goes to prisons, he goes to AA meetings, he will go anywhere where 3 or more people are gathered who need some help with substance abuse. So God bless Bernie. And we have the greatest closer in all history, Mariano Rivera, who saved more games than anybody. Now he is saving lives, saving marriages, saving society. He is an ordained minister, and by all accounts, very, very active in the community, very hands-on. Another example would be Darryl Strawberry, who played for the Mets. A lot of you will remember that. He is an ordained minister, and like Bernie, he had substance problems, and he speaks whenever he has the opportunity on the issue of substance reform. So we have more examples, but those three are probably the three you know the best. And they are really walking the walk. So hats off to them. Now, if we move from kind of the celebration and the people and move on to our covenant service to all, one example I would offer is the Red Sox commitment to the Jimmy Fund, which in fact, the Jimmy Fund anniversary goes back 75 years this year. The first 5 years, it was actually the Boston Braves who sponsored and maintained the Jimmy Fund. And when they moved to Milwaukee in 1953, their owner went to Tom Yawkey and said, "We're not going to be able to keep this going from Milwaukee. You have to take it over." And he did. And I would say that Tom gave more money, Ted Williams spent more time than any two people on the Jimmy Fund. But I can also tell you, having interviewed over 150 Red Sox players, that for many of them, that has become their most important charity. And they've given tens of thousands of volunteer time, going to banquets, going to play in golf tournaments, all again to raise money for the Jimmy Fund, a very important charity. I'm going to share a few stories about the 2013 Red Sox and their contribution to the community. A lot of you, maybe most of you remember, they did win the World Championship. They did go from worst to first. And they did win the World Series at home for the first time in 95 years, now 105 years. But more significantly was their reaction and action about the tragedy at the Patriots Day Marathon tragedy on April 19th, or actually on Patriots Day. And the Red Sox game ended about 2:11, and by 2:49, about half of them were on the bus, the other half were saying goodbye to their families. And at 2:49, 2 bombs went off, 3 people were killed, almost 300 people were hospitalized. The worst disaster in Boston in years and years and years. So they flew off to Cleveland, and the woman who was in charge of coordinating their relations with the community at large told me the following day, she was walking across the Boston Common. I think we all altered our lifestyle a little bit. Tuesday after that tragedy, we still didn't know what was going on. But anyway, she was walking across the Boston Common, and her cell phone rang, and it was Dustin Pedroia. And he said, "As soon as we get back, you have to arrange for us to go to all the hospitals so we can see if we can't give a little comfort to the victims, as well as say thank you to the caregivers. We want to say thank you to the public safety people, and just bystanders who jumped in and helped out. Only one condition: no publicity. It is only going to be meaningful to the people who are trying to help if it's between us, just the two of us. And it cannot look like a publicity stunt." And when I interviewed Joe Castiglione, who's been the radio voice of the Red Sox for 40 plus years, he said, in all my 40 years, I've never seen a professional sports team bond with the community the way this particular club did. He said, generally they're Hessians. They come in, they do the right things, say the right things, and then they go home, and their interaction with the community is off stage. And in this case, it was all very spontaneous, all very genuine. And again, very few people realized how much they actually did. And that was the way they wanted And in addition, the Red Sox themselves, stood up, and before almost every game after that, there was some sort of ceremony recognizing, praising, the caregivers, the public safety people, even the victims. And, usually the players, when 10 minutes before the game, are running in the outfield or disappeared in the clubhouse. And in that particular year, they were all on the front step of the dugout in Fenway for every game. And I've interviewed a number of the players. Johnny Gomes, who was one of the more eloquent speakers, said, somebody gets out there and throws out the first ball on one leg. You think I'm going to run slowly to first base? He said, every single one of us were really, really powered by what was going on. And, if you think about it, the fact that Sarah happened to take the call in Boston Common 200 years ago after a tragedy like that, everybody would have gathered in the Common and worked it through. As it turned out, in this particular year, over the next 75 games or so, everybody gathered at Fenway Park and took their moment. And just another thing, a lot of the players were new. They had actually recruited 7 free agents, all of whom were in their 30s, all of whom were good role players and particularly good clubhouse people. And so they were new to Boston and the fans' commitment. The first game was played on the Saturday after the tragedy. And the players, those particular players, said, well, I guess it'll be 8,000, 10,000 people. I mean, this is a war zone. People are really at risk in large crowds. And they were actually stunned when they showed up and saw the place was filled. Of course there were 35,000 fans there, but they didn't know that. And they said that they found that very energizing. And a couple, I talked to Dempster, and I talked to Ross, who's now the manager of the Cubs. And he said, some of us said goodbye to family, and we thought they might be heading over to the finish line. And we didn't know because the cell phones weren't working. We flew off to Cleveland, not really knowing how things turned out for our families. And when they got to Cleveland, everybody got together in a team meeting, and that's when they decided that they, in fact, could get out in the community and provide whatever comfort they could. But they were genuinely surprised that there was a sellout crowd there on the Saturday following. And the Red Sox themselves stepped up as an organization. And I interviewed the woman who actually arranges all the ceremonies. And she said, we never had a meeting and said, okay, the rest of the year we're going to recognize all the people who deserve to be recognized. She said it was spontaneous, organic. Let me give you an example. Shortly after the tragedy, we got a call from one of the hospitals saying, we're discharging so-and-so today, and all his clothes were lost in the explosion, and he doesn't have any family or friends. Can you do anything to help? And Sarah said, we have a store across the street. We're going to walk over there. We're going to get pants, clothes, underwear, everything that somebody might need. We only need 3 things from you. And that is, what size, where do we drop them, what time? And she said that happened over and over and over. Because most of the people who worked in the front office lived in the community, and particularly the greater Boston area. So some of them were actually connected. And again, it was really, really spontaneous that they took this step to reach out and do special things. And again, they never looked for any great applause. But again, I was so moved by the play that we took it personally. We all had families. We all left them behind. And the entire season, that was in the back of our mind, or before a game in the forefront of our mind. And we were truly energized by that experience. And, in all my years, 28 years and over 150 interviews, I've never heard anything like it. My first morning, I called Ryan Dempster and interviewed him for about 45 minutes. He was a pitcher for the team, a very good pitcher. And when the call ended, he said, "Thank you for calling." And I paused, because in the 150 interviews, nobody had ever thanked me before. And I said, "Well, why do you have to say that, Ryan?" He said, "Because what we did meant an awful lot to us. And I hadn't really thought about it in quite a while. And you asking, us talking, really, really brought it back to me. And I really appreciate it." And then when I interviewed Ross, who's now the manager of the Chicago Cubs, any final words? He said, "Yes, I want to thank the people of Boston for giving us the opportunity to have an experience of a lifetime and really make a contribution." As I said, so many of them were new, and when they went to the hospitals, they were just amazed at the reaction of the patient. And the next thing they knew, all the nurses and all the caregivers were in there. And then they looked up, and all the custodians were there. They had no idea how the Red Sox are worshipped in this community. They just didn't know. And that energized them, because I said, we could really make a difference, it turns out. They had no idea that they could actually have some impact. So, to me, that's a perfect example of, service to all, blocking the walk. And obviously that's what they should have done, but nobody else does it. So I think it's worth recognizing. And so this is probably an ideal time to all join in to sing "Take Me Out to the Ballgame." Everybody has the full lyrics, and Moira is going to provide a little leadership for all of us, and we'll have a good time singing all the verses.
Blue.
thank you, Stephen, as always. Excellent job. And I thought you were all terrific. And it turns out it's actually a pretty song. It was written in 1909 by somebody who had never been to a baseball game. But he was in the subway before a game, and everybody was getting on subway cars to go to the Polo Grounds or the Ebbets Field, and he was so taken by the enthusiasm when he got on the train. In 15 minutes, he dashed off the entire song. And it was actually meant and received as a romantic song. It was the #1 song in 1909. And obviously, I'm not sure what else is sung more, but it sure is sung a lot. We never get tired of it. And I want to thank you all for being here. Oh, I want to point one historic reference. In your copies of the lyrics, the very first line you will find baseball spelled as 2 words. And in fact, originally that's how it was always described, except from time to time an author would say base, just assuming everybody he meant base with a ball. And you know, we know exactly the time when Tracy Stalin threw the home run pitch to Roger Maris in 1961, and he hit his 60th. We know the exact time. We know the first, almost every single one. But nobody knows when baseball became baseball. I guess it just sort of evolved, like so many words in the English language. So again, thank you all, and may all of your impossible dreams come true. May we all be safe at home. Thank you very much.